My guest today is Christian Ziegler. He is the vice chair of the Florida GOP. And let me just put this in a capsule for you. The Florida GOP has been on a bit of a 2-decade winning streak in Florida. Yes, Barack Obama carried the state twice. Yes, Nikki Fried is our agriculture commissioner, and she is a Democrat. Yes, Bill Nelson got reelected, but then lost his seat. Florida is red for all intents and purposes. And it's not just at the federal level where everyone focuses. Our Florida House is overwhelmingly Republican. The Florida Senate is majority Republican, not an overwhelming majority, but a pretty good majority. And Ziegler is one of these people who is trying to not just get the president reelected, but expand that majority, target some congressional seats, and make what is already a reddish state even redder. Here's our interview. In 2016, we obviously had a wide open political race. You had Democrats wide open, the Republicans were wide open. You're going into 2020 in a better position than the Democrats simply because you know who your nominee is going to be. How prepared is the Florida GOP for this race?
Look, it's exciting. As you mentioned, I mean, we have the president who's done a phenomenal job in office. Really, in 2016, he had a tough time. And when you look at the primary, kind of getting the Republican Party totally solidified behind him. But now that he's been in office, he's proven everyone that he's a staunch conservative. I mean, he's put justices on the court and he's gotten people excited. He's gone after the media, which we've always had frustrations with. And he's gone after the left, which, you know, for so long we've just been defending, but now he's on the attack. And what that's done is it's really solidified his support with the conservative and the Republican base. So much so that about a year and a half out from the election, we were getting criticized because we didn't have campaign offices opened up that far in advance. So, you know, now we're in election season. Normally we open up the offices just months before the election, but we've had volunteers across the state begging to be involved and begging to have activity. So, you know, we have boots on the ground. We just hired our 90th staffer, but it is a lot easier when you have a nominee that everyone can rally against or rally behind. And I think with Donald Trump, we have that, and he's a strong president. He's doing a great job, and I think the grassroots are there for him.
Well, I mean, whether you're talking about Bill Clinton getting reelected, or George W. Bush getting reelected, or Barack Obama getting reelected, it is fundamentally easier when you are the incumbent to get reelected than when you are somebody coming from either the outside or just a challenger trying to get there. How much are you guys experiencing that?
Well, it is, as long as you do a good job, right? I mean, there are incumbents that get into office, they do a poor job, and then actually being an incumbent hurts them. So it really comes down to their record. Donald Trump now he'll have, you know, 3.5 years going into this election of a record that people can point at. You look at the 2 justices he put on the Supreme Court. You look at the economy, I think over 61%, there's a Gallup poll recently, over 61% of Americans say they're better off today than they were before Donald Trump was president. That really helps. And having that record, especially for someone that's never been in politics before, like Donald Trump before he became president, having that record really gives you something to look at and to judge him by. And I think the American people, I mean, look, we have record low unemployment. We have more jobs out there, or more people looking for work than jobs. And all of that combined really makes it a lot easier. So I say being an incumbent's good, because we can, you know, we have someone to rally behind. We don't have to go through the primary process that we're seeing on the Democrat side. But also having a record that's been so strong like the president has is very helpful for us.
One of the things that has really struck me that I think the Trump campaign and the GOP has done very well this cycle is some of the digital. Yep. And not just getting digital ads out there and that kind of stuff that people see, the stuff behind the scenes, the harvesting. And I know harvesting might be a harsh word. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but listen, that stuff's gold. If you can get a couple of, you know, indicators, this person here drives a Ford F-150, this person here has a concealed carry license, this person here, these are markers that you can look at and say, possible Trump voter, let's reach out to them. How much of that are you guys doing, and how valuable is that going to be?
Well, in 2020, what the big difference here that I like, I'm a digital guy. I'm a political digital guy. I've been doing it for over 10 years. I was one of the first new media directors on Capitol Hill. So it's a passion of mine. And what's exciting about 2020 is now you have Brad Parscale coming in as campaign manager. He is a digital guy. He is a digital data guy that in 2016 he did a phenomenal job, but he wasn't at the head. Now they've moved him into campaign manager, and this is the first time you've seen a major presidential candidate take a digital / data guy, put him in charge of the campaign, and everything he's doing is built around that digital and that data aspect, like as you mentioned. And we're seeing amazing results too from it. I mean, all their ads, everything they're doing, yes, they're trying to capture data, trying to understand voters a little bit more. Where are they at on the issues? Where are they at on their beliefs in this race? And we look at the rallies. I mean, your phone, every phone has a device ID. And that device ID is constantly pinging. This is pretty interesting, but that device ID is pinging satellites. So you know where that device is. And they're tracking when you go to register to go to an event, they're tracking that you're registered, you put your name down, your email, they're matching it to the voter file. They can see who's coming in the rallies. And the data we're getting from that is invaluable. I mean, we look at, I think it's about, in a recent rally, there was about 20% of the people that went to a Trump rally were actually registered Democrats. 30% had only voted in one of the last 4 elections.
But this is something I find fascinating. What you're talking about right now was impossible 20 years ago.
Correct.
We didn't have the computing power, you just didn't have the information. And this is the part of the campaign. Everyone was like, well, you got to go knock doors. That's important.
Yeah.
You got to go put campaign signs out in front yards. Yeah, that's important. But what you're talking about here, man, that is the new frontier.
Yeah, everything, I mean, it's changed the game, right? I mean, now you can run ads instead of just putting a billboard up, for example, and hoping that voters drive by it, and especially like in Orlando, you got a lot of visitors. You can actually spend your money and get that billboard in front of just people that are going to vote in front of their eyes, right? So that's a very basic explanation of what's going on, but everything that we're doing is capturing that data so we can map people and identify them on the issues, on their ideology. And it has changed, but I'm still a big believer you really have to do all the above, right? I mean, you're going to have people that are sitting on Facebook, actually, you know, most of the population's on there, and they're looking at, you know, on Facebook, they're scrolling through and you can deliver ads, but you also want to get people in their mailbox. I mean, you have to do that. If an absentee ballot's going out, you want to make sure your mail piece is on top of that absentee ballot the day it hits. You got to do the phones, and really the door-to-door is, that's probably the most effective when you can look at a voter in their eye and have a conversation with them. But to scale that is a little bit more difficult. But we're fortunate, like I said, we have 90 staffers on the ground. They're going to be aggressive out there. We're hiring a lot more. We're going to have volunteers all around the state. They're going to be knocking on those doors and making those personal touches while the campaign is overlaying a digital strategy on that as well.
How important is Florida?
I mean, Florida is the most important political state. We're fortunate. I mean, you as a reporter is fortunate. You know, you're fortunate to report here if you're interested in politics. And then from the political party perspective, I can't say that there's a more important state in the country. If Democrats were to win Florida, I think it makes it very difficult for a Republican to win the presidency. I feel good in Florida. Our numbers are good for President Trump. But this is a must-win state for the president. And, you know, it's a big state. It's a diverse state. And it's a fun state to be involved in politics.
It's an expensive state.
It is. It is. I mean, you rely heavily on the TV markets if you don't have name ID. Luckily, we have a president that has very high name ID.
Well, he's the president.
Yeah.
That
so
helps.
that does help. But, you know, we look at some of these other races and, you know, the Democrat side, I don't know if any of them have even campaigned in Florida yet. It is an expensive state to play in.
When you look out at campaigning in Florida, and this is something I talked to Steve Shale about, obviously.
Yep.
You know Steve.
Yeah, Steve's a great guy.
Great
confident,
guy. Probably
very confident
Probably
guy.
not going to vote for Trump. We'll give that up. But he brought up a good point, which I think everyone I've ever talked to about this agrees. You play North Florida different than you play Central Florida, then you play South Florida. You really almost have 3 different states you're playing, all within the boundaries of Florida. How difficult, just from a campaign perspective, is it to say, we're going to Pensacola for a rally, but we better have a different message, not necessarily, you know, different on an issue, but just a different kind of rally when we head to Miami or when we're in Tampa or Orlando?
Yeah, so what's interesting about Florida is we have a lot of rural counties, right? And when we look at those rural counties, they're very conservative, they're very Republican. They even some of them may be majority registered Democrats. Democrats actually vote Republican because they're old school Democrats, they vote conservative. And those votes that we rack up in the Panhandle and in those rural counties, especially in North Florida, they really make up for some of the bleed that we have in Southeast Florida, where there's a little bit more Democrat, a little bit more blue. And as you mentioned, you know, the I-4 corridor right in Central Florida, that really becomes the battleground. I mean, that's almost like the wall right there where we meet. But we're, you know, with this president, we're in a very good spot. I can't stress this enough because his economic record is helping all Americans, whether you're Republican or Democrat. African American unemployment's record low, Hispanic unemployment's record low, women unemployment's record low. I mean, across the board, the economy's better off. And that's really the issue. I mean, people get passionate about all these other issues, but those economic issues, I mean, you got to make sure you can put food on your plate for your family. You got to put a roof over your family's head. You can't do anything else until you start doing that for your family. And like I said, over 61% of Americans are better off today than they were before Trump was president. And by doing that, that gives us cover in the entire state that we really don't need that specialized, focus. I mean, obviously we're going to have messaging, and there's going to be issues that Southeast Florida cares about that are a little bit different than the Panhandle, especially with some of the socialist policies that are being promoted by the Democrats. We're going to make sure they know who's trying to drive that.
But you can go down to South Florida and hammer on Maduro and Venezuela.
Correct.
That message may get an applause in Pensacola, but it's not salient there the
Correct.
same way that perhaps Second Amendment rights
That's right.
are big in the Panhandle.
That's correct. And also the Supreme Court justices, really kind of saving our culture and protecting it by packing that court with conservatives. That's going to play a lot better in the Panhandle. So you're right on that. But the overarching theme of this campaign is really looking at the economy and how well we're doing. And that really does help everyone. So there's enough success at the president's done that we can spread that all over the state, and it's going to resonate with everyone. But you are right. I mean, you look up in the Panhandle, those individuals, they obviously are a little bit more limited government, a little bit more pro-Second Amendment, a little bit more socially conservative, and that plays very well with this president's record. And then down in Southeast Florida, like I said, look at the Democrat Party. They're pushing these socialist policies that a lot of people in Southeast Florida, the reason why they're in Southeast Florida is because they left socialism back home. And we're going to make sure they know where the parties stand on those issues.
You also do go into this cycle, and I'm going to get down to, I want to talk down ballot in a minute, but you also go in with the advantage of you have 2 sitting U.S. senators who can be good surrogates out on the road. You also have a very popular, listen, I'm going to say this, a more popular than the president governor in Ron DeSantis, who will be a pretty decent surrogate out there as well. The president, he has a lot of people he can tap to help him out.
Yeah, correct. I mean, look, Ron DeSantis, he's polling in the 70s. It's unbelievable. I mean, no one's ever seen something like this.
You're like he's not going to primary the president, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that Ron DeSantis and the president work very well together, and they complement each other very well. Ron DeSantis last year, when he was running, he got the support of the president, and that really helped him in the primary. Now that we're turning towards a general election, I think you're going to see Ron DeSantis out there around the state helping the president, and his numbers are just going to help. And it's not just with Republicans. I mean, Republicans overwhelmingly support our president and support our governor. But if you look at Governor DeSantis' numbers with independents and Democrats, it's unbelievable. African Americans, how much support he's received from them, specifically because of his pro-school choice policies. This governor's doing a phenomenal job, and it's only going to help, as you mentioned. I mean, it's only going to help going into 2020 during this campaign cycle to get the president over the edge in Florida. I mean, it would be tough. I almost feel bad for the Democrats in Florida, because we do have both U.S. senators, most of our cabinet members. We have one that's a Democrat, but the rest are Republicans, and our governor is just polling through the roof. I don't know where they go. They're not going to have much, juice out there on the campaign trail in Florida. I don't even know if the Democrat Party plays in Florida at the end of the day, because I just don't know how they compete in this state. Obviously, Florida is always a battleground. I mean, we don't want to take it for granted. I'd rather, run like we're 20 points down and win by, 19 or 20 than win by 1. It's always a close race, but I feel very, very good in Florida.
Yeah, I mentioned, I think might have mentioned to Peter Sorch the other day, it's not outside the realm to say, in 2018, Ron DeSantis rode Donald Trump's coattails to the governor's mansion. In 2020, you could possibly say Trump rides DeSantis' coattails to carrying Florida. Not that it's a slight against the president. It just, I think, speaks to the fact that DeSantis does have pretty good popularity right now.
Look, I don't think Donald Trump rides anyone's coattails. This is a president that has overwhelming name ID, that is very aggressive, that's out there. He's made it very clear where he stands. And in 2016, with all the data and the digital and the campaigning that we did, the best asset at the end of the day was President Trump. I think you're going to see that in 2020. He's his greatest asset on the campaign trail. The American people resonate with him. They're excited about him. I think Governor DeSantis, no doubt, with his polling numbers, is going to help the president. He's going to be a net positive for him. And then you look at, Rick Scott and you look at Marco Rubio, two superstar senators. They're going to be assisting as well. But there is no doubt that Governor DeSantis and his numbers and the great job that he's done is going to help the president. But it's not just Governor DeSantis. It's the Republican leadership across the state of Florida. And really, Florida is so much better off now that Donald Trump's president, or since Donald Trump became president. And I think it's going to pay off in 2020.
Let's talk down ballot. Obviously, there are some congressional seats you'd like to pick up.
Yep.
I know here in Central Florida, you go out towards Tampa. I know the Charlie Crist seat is one that you guys have identified. Here, closer to where we're sitting right now, Stephanie Murphy's seat's another one. Where are you guys targeting beyond those two?
Okay, so those are two good seats that we're going to focus on. I think Charlie Crist has been a complete disaster. Stephanie Murphy, she kind of goes back and forth on where she is. She tries to paint herself as a moderate, goes up D.C., she's more of a liberal. Two other seats that I'm very excited about down in Southeast Florida, the Shalala seat specifically, really talking about and reminding people. I mean, there was a big scare here when Bernie Sanders, after the initial first couple caucuses, came out and they're like, man, this guy's the front runner for the Democrat Party. And then his, kind of praising Castro and what went on there. We need to remind the people in those districts down in Southeast Florida of exactly what he said, what party he represents, and how much of a chunk of that Democrat Party is committed to those policies. And we're going to constantly hammer that away. We have a very strong, center of operations down in Southeast Florida. They're going to get that message out, and we've seen very positive results and reactions from the Cuban community down there that are frustrated, that are scared, and that are angry that the Democrat Party would promote any of these policies that they fled from. So those two seats down there, I think 26, 27, it's an exciting opportunity for us to be able to pick up.
So you feel like you've got two down there and then two on I-4 that you possibly could go after?
I think so. I mean, I think Stephanie Murphy is definitely vulnerable. The Charlie Crist race, we got to get through the primary. There's a couple candidates running there. But Charlie's a guy that was a Republican governor, then he went to the Independent, then he went to Democrat, and now he's doing all these anti-Second Amendment rallies when he was pro-Second Amendment. I mean, he really doesn't have really an ideological compass. He doesn't know where he's at any point, where he's on the issues, and we'll take advantage of that. I think people are sick of it. That's old style politics. People don't like it. People want genuine individuals in office. And we have a couple great candidates that are running in that race.
We're going to get more granular here. Let's talk Florida Legislature.
Yeah.
What's the plan there? Because I know there's things that, especially in the Florida Senate, you'd like to do, but you don't have quite enough seats to get over the hump. Pretty good majority in the House. What's the plan look like?
Well, the Senate's obviously a little tighter than the House. The House is staunchly conservative. We have a speaker there, Jose Oliva, has been doing a great job for conservatives and the conservative cause. When we look at the Senate, we'd like to increase our majority there. I think a seat right here in the backyard is Jason Broder's seat. I'd like to get him.
Technically, David Simmons' seat.
Yeah, correct.
Broder has to win it.
Correct. But I think the seat that he's running for, we'll keep that, and I think he'll do a great job. He's a staunch conservative. He's someone that we need to send to the Senate. But that'll be a battleground. That'll be a focus for us. And, we're going to have a lot of people on the ground in this area. We're working directly with the Seminole County GOP there to make sure that they have all the resources and all the, people that they need to be successful. I'm actually meeting with them after this to discuss that race. So, it's a good opportunity for us when we look at the Senate. I think we can increase our majority there. We're going to have Wilton Simpson coming in as Senate President. I think he's going to do a great job. He's a great guy out of Central Florida. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be the battleground. The Senate races are always the battleground. It's tough because really most of them are kind of solidified either way. So there's very few in the middle that you can flip. But we need to make sure that we keep that seat with Jason Broder in there.
One of the things that's always struck me about the Florida GOP since I came to the state in 2012 is just how well-oiled a machine it tends to be. And I don't like to compare it to the Democrats in the state because they seem to be terribly disorganized. I think that diminishes. And this is just simple blocking and tackling. Yep. This isn't me blowing sunshine over the party. You look at a seat like David Simmons and Brodeur, year and a half out. He's getting everything in order to go for it. Rob Bradley, he's up against term limits. His wife is running for it. I did give him grief for the fact that I hadn't seen an endorsement from him for his replacement. And so, but I will say this, I mean, how much of an advantage is that for the party that it does have that bench that it looks at and says, when this person's up, we have this person, this person, this person who we've started grooming, who potentially could move in there. How much of an advantage is that?
No, that helps. If you can kind of get through the primary process and not be bloodied and not have it messy, that only helps the Republican Party's chances in the general election, right? We're very fortunate because the government, I mean, when we look at Florida government here, it has been controlled by Republicans for some time. It's very difficult for Democrats to win, which is fascinating considering the registration advantage that they have in the state of Florida, yet we continually win these races. But yeah, I mean, look, the Republican Party of Florida, I'm very confident in our abilities. It's a very professional organization. We have some great team members around us, and we have some amazing volunteers and party leaders at the local level. So all of that really kind of comes together into a well-oiled machine. And then our job is to just deliver for those candidates and make sure they win in November. And, Jason Broder is a great candidate. Jennifer Bradley is a great candidate. Those are individuals that, we're fortunate to have on the ballot because they're so competent. They're very active. I mean, Jason Broder, he's like a machine campaigner. I mean, that guy's everywhere. And we really rely on those candidates to kind of go out there and do that legwork, do those grassroots work, raise the money, show up. But the party apparatus, we come in and overlay that with some of our efforts and some of our focuses.
And I'll wrap up with this to that end. If you were to tell me, okay, there's a wide open governor's race coming up. DeSantis decides he's not running for re-election for whatever reason. I can name 5, 6, 7, 8 Republicans that I would say definitely have a shot at it. I can't do the same for the Democrats. I can't. And I think that speaks to the bench issue. And at the end of the day, you and I have talked about, name ID, we've talked about the blocking and tackling of knocking on doors, digital. It's the most important thing is having that bench and having an organization.
Yeah, you need quality candidates. It all starts with the candidates first, right? I mean, you can't take a poor candidate, try to run them and get them elected. You need a good candidate, which we have, and we do have a very strong bench, so we're very fortunate. And I think it really comes down to the unity that we have in the Republican Party. We got a great governor with Ron DeSantis. We have 2 U.S. senators now that are Republicans. That's fantastic. Our cabinet, we have some solid cabinet members. Our Senate leadership, our House leadership, I mean, just across the board, we have quality. And what that does is once a seat opens up for a congressional seat, or if an open governor's seat were to pop up, you can grab that individual and toss them in that race, and we're going to have someone that's going to be competitive from day one. The Democrats are always out there. I mean, especially even like Sarasota, we have Margaret Good. And she, is running for Congress now, so she's given up her seat. That's an open seat. Democrat Party can't figure out who to run, and that's a current Democrat incumbent. They don't have a bench enough to figure out, okay, this person's going to be running, and this is who we're going to support. And now that's left open that seat, we'll probably pick that up. I believe we'll pick that up on the Republican side this year. And it comes from not having that bench and being disorganized. Well,
the Simmons seat's a perfect example. Everyone's known he's up against term limits.
Yeah.
That's not a secret. Brodeur has been out there knocking on doors, raising money, getting things organized. And I had a conversation with Anna Escamani maybe a year ago, and I said, "Who's running there?" And she's like, "I think they're still trying to figure that out." And that was a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's not indicative of a party that has everything together. God help you if the Democrats ever figure that out.
Well, I mean, that's what I don't understand is you bring up a good point there, right? We have term limits in place. You have an expiration date on a politician, basically. You know there's to the exact day and time when that person's going to be up.
Ted Yoho says, "I'm not seeking re-election." It's like, okay, now we need to start moving.
Correct.
But yeah, everyone knew Simmons is.
But the Democrat Party has yet to figure out that, hey, when someone's termed up, we should have someone ready to run, or we should have a couple candidates ready to run that are credible. And what always ends up happening, again, we're seeing kind of in Sarasota, is the time comes and then their time expires or a seat opens up and there's no one there to kind of fill that seat or run that's credible, and they're scrambling for months while our candidates out there raising the money, knocking on the doors, making the voter contact, and it just benefits us at the end of the day, and I think that's why you've seen a lot of Republican wins.